Welcome to Forgotten Code, where we talk about games that other people aren't. This time around, we're talking about the Nintendo 64 puzzle game Tetrisphere, developed by H2O Entertainment and published by Nintendo in 1997. This puzzling little title has a fascinating development history, interesting aesthetics, and unconventional gameplay that's unlike anything we've seen since. So get your L blocks ready, because we're about to drop into the curious world of Tetrisphere. If you've played video games at all in the last few decades, you've probably come across Tetris in some form or another. This brilliantly simple puzzle game was first released in 1985 by Soviet software engineer Alexei Pajitnov. That story, the story of its development and unprecedented worldwide success, is a fascinating one, but that's a topic for another video. If you're curious, check out the book The Tetris Effect, The Game That Hypnotized the World by Dan Ackerman. That's a great place to start. Suffice it to say, it was a massive hit, and has been ported to every conceivable platform, with countless variations across the decades. Some are great, some are not so great, but the ubiquitous nature of the game clearly demonstrates what a significant part of the cultural zeitgeist Tetris has become. Frankly, I'm shocked it hasn't been optioned into a 10-part motion picture deal. It's not too late, whoever owns the right to Tetris. Bring us the extended block universe. You can make the adorable dinos from Bust-a-Move the villains. Let's fast forward 10 years, from the Cold War era 80s to the mid-90s, when a game called Fear was being developed for the ill-fated Atari Jaguar. It is critical to know that Fear is spelled P-H-E-A-R, because this was the 90s, and everything had to be spelled wrong. It was the law. If you're thinking to yourself, what the hell is an Atari Jaguar? It's totally understandable. There are approximately 5 billion videos on the doomed console you can check out after this one, but suffice it to say, it was a console billed as cutting edge, as the future of gaming, and was released in 1993. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the future of gaming, and it bombed hard, and has since been relegated to the plastic heap of history, along with the Virtual Boy, the N-Gage, and Google Stadia. Fortunately for the developers of Fear, their project didn't go down with that particular ship. Fear was first shown at the 1995 Consumer Electronics Show. While it was quite different from the game that would eventually come out, Nintendo seemed to see potential. They acquired the rights from H2O Entertainment and began the process of porting it to their new console. Here's some footage of Fear, courtesy of the National Video Game Museum's YouTube channel. Though what you see obviously looks different from what it would become, the foundation is recognizable. The building blocks, pun intended, were in place, and when Nintendo took control, they applied their trademark polish and painted over the project with the Tetris brand to help the title stand out. Here's how the Big N describes the game in an article published on Nintendo.com in 1998. Quote, "Tetrisphere looks to be another dazzling time killer in the tradition of Tetris and Tetris Attack. It's no surprise to find out that Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of the original Tetris, consulted on the game's development." End quote. There are some great 90s-era descriptions in this article, which I'll link to in the comments. I particularly like this one. Quote, "The first puzzle game for the N64 is a spinning and flashing 3D blast. In Tetrisphere, you blast your way to the core of a giant sphere, but that's a bit like saying Mario is just another guy with a mustache." End quote. So true, Nintendo. So true. I was surprised to hear that Pajitnov was consulted, but the vagueness of the word consult might be doing some heavy lifting here. In an interview published by Kikizo with Pajitnov, the Tetris creator said, quote, "Ah yes, we did Tetrisphere, but that was a kind of contract work, and I kind of continued at my master job. That's why I kept looking around and could do contract work." End quote. Still not exactly sure what level of involvement we're talking about here. That could mean anything from sending one email one time that says, "Fine, just tell me when the check clears," to a more hands-on role, but that distinction is not made clear. I'd guess more the former, given how far Tetrisphere diverges from Tetris and how similar it is to Fear, but I'd love to know just how involved he was. Tetrisphere finally debuted in North America in August 1997, followed by a February 1998 release in PAL regions. While it wasn't the biggest release of the year, it garnered generally positive reviews. With Tetris in its name and being the first puzzle game on the platform, it managed to attract attention despite its lower profile. Doug Perry at IGN gave it a pretty stellar 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "Tetrisphere is a fun puzzler that almost anybody can quickly take a liking to. The game's fast-paced strategy and 3D levels add up for loads of fun that players will surely appreciate." End quote. An unnamed reviewer at GameSpot gave it a wildly high 9.5 out of 10, saying, quote, Impressively polished in every area, Tetrisphere provides a new puzzle depth benchmark while doing an excellent job of showing off the abilities of the Nintendo 64 hardware, making the title yet another in the handful of great N64 games that contrast sharply with much of the machine's third-party dreck. End quote. That's an interesting and not entirely unfair slight against the console, subtly buried in the otherwise positive reception of this particular game. Those who played Tetrisphere seem to love it, but as is often the case, critical acclaim doesn't necessarily equate to commercial success. According to an H2O press release, Tetrisphere sold over 430,000 units worldwide by March 31st of '98. While not a blockbuster, it's far from a failure, especially for a smaller studio. For context, Zelda Ocarina of Time sold 7 million copies by the year 2000, though that game had a much larger marketing budget and was one of the most high-profile releases of its time. So, Tetrisphere was a modest commercial success and people seem to like it. While it didn't revolutionize the Tetris franchise, clearly there were no sequels after all, it's still fondly remembered. A lot of those positive memories are likely tied to the music, which we will get to. Oh, will we ever. But first let's talk a bit about what it's like to play Tetrisphere. If you go in expecting Tetris, as I did, you'll likely be caught off guard. Unlike traditional Tetris where you clear lines of blocks by building lines across the screen, the goal here is to match 3 identical blocks to trigger combos. You can drop or slide pieces to create these matches, and once 3 of the same type connect, they explode in a very satisfying way, sometimes setting off chain reactions that clear even more pieces. After you complete a combo in Tetrisphere, some blocks will start glowing, turning into power pieces, which allow you to add to the combo and continue the enormously satisfying destruction. If you remove 20 or more pieces in a combo, you'll earn a magic item that helps clear large chunks of the sphere. If you hold on to your magic and earn more, it upgrades to a more powerful version. Each magic item has its own unique effect and area of removal, increasing as you upgrade. These are fun as hell. It's so satisfying to clear huge chunks of the sphere with a firecracker or a bomb, and it's a neat way to recontextualize the satisfaction of using the line block in classic Tetris to clear a huge part of the screen. You only get a few mistakes before it's game over, 3 to be exact, represented by hearts. You lose a life if you drop a piece without making a combo, and when that happens, any magic you've saved disappears, your combo multiplier resets to 1, and the speed meter fully refills. If you lose all 3 lives, you're done. None of this is super well explained, even in the tutorial, but somehow it feels pretty intuitive, and you can get pretty far without mastering the complexities of these systems. The gameplay may initially appear fairly simple, and in some ways it is, but this is somewhat ameliorated by the various game modes designed to keep things fresh. In the main rescue mode, you'll free a little robot from inside the sphere by clearing layers, with difficulty ramping up as levels progress. Hide and Seek has similar objectives, but with extra challenges like revealing a hidden image. In puzzle mode, there's no timer, and you have limited moves to clear the board. There's multiplayer too, which seems like it might be fun, including split-screen races. There's also a time trial, practice mode, and a hidden lines mode, where blocks clear themselves when matched. And that's pretty much it. It's not enormously complicated, but it's not supposed to be. It's based on Tetris after all. A game like this lives or dies on whether it's satisfying more than anything else, and whether it can stand out in a crowded field with unique aesthetics and mechanics. I think Tetrisphere achieves that goal. It's a unique and unusual game. There really hasn't been anything quite like it before or since, and even if it doesn't connect with you the way the elegant simplicity of Tetris does, there's a lot of thoughtful design here. It's fun to play, and at the end of the day, that's really what matters, right? A visual identity helps too, though, and Tetrisphere certainly has that. It's not a particularly sophisticated-looking game, though it does make solid use of the Nintendo 64's polygon rendering capabilities, and it has a clean look that has aged pretty well. It doesn't suffer as much from the low texture resolution due to the simplified presentation, so in many ways it's aged better visually than other games from 1997. The funny little robots you'll encounter aren't exactly triumphs of character design. They're cute enough, though. There's no story to speak of, nor should there be, but there's a simple narrative framing for the hide-and-seek mode, which is sorta sweet. Take a look for yourself. So, visuals are strong, if not exactly world-changing. There's no real storytelling to speak of, which leaves the audio. This is what most people remember about this game, and where it really shines. The sound design is solid all around. The loud slam when you miss a drop is suitably frightening. The ethereal pop when pieces clear provide the perfect rush of dopamine. Even without the music, it would be a thoughtfully designed audio experience, but the music. Ah yes, the music. Let's talk about this stellar soundtrack composed by Neil Voss. After working on the project for the Jaguar, Voss became audio director when it moved to the N64. Voss was the sole producer, composer, and sound engineer for Tetrisphere. He focused on stereophonic sound to enhance immersion and even simulated surround sound for a more engaging auditory experience. It was all composed using Fast Tracker 2 on a Pentium PC, which is wild to imagine now. There's an insightful interview with Neil Voss on IGN from 1998 where he talks about his experience composing Tetrisphere's soundtrack in a refreshingly honest and straightforward way. It's a candid look at the creative process, far from the polished, PR-heavy responses you'd expect today. It's neat stuff. I've linked to it in the comments. I'm not a music critic, so I don't necessarily have the vocabulary to articulate how it's aged, but clearly it has. Still though, I find it has a charm that helps it stand out from other N64 games and other games from this era on other consoles. It's very 90s, of course, but the samples used sound great, and the melodies have a complexity that makes it very listenable today. Here's a few samples. It cultivates a rather ethereal, mysterious vibe that makes playing Tetrisphere seem futuristic or almost cosmic somehow. I'm sure it was, and still could be, a big hit among the recreational psychoactive substance enjoyers. I loved this soundtrack as a kid. Sometimes I would leave my Nintendo 64 running just to hear it, or even try to record the songs onto a cassette, as was the style of the time. Real nostalgia fuel right here. Given the limitations of the console, it stands out as truly memorable and a real highlight of the Nintendo 64's musical portfolio. If there were a greatest hits collection for Nintendo 64 music, Tetrisphere would absolutely deserve to be on it, right alongside the classics like GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, and Ocarina of Time. Pretty incredible company to keep. Voss really deserves a lot of credit. So, you should definitely listen to Tetrisphere, but should you play it? In a word, yes. Try it out. It's super easy to pick up and play, and its design works perfectly for quick bursts. If you get tired of clearing spheres after a few rounds, it doesn't demand much from you and you can easily step away. Once you understand the unconventional gameplay, it becomes sort of hypnotic. There's enough complexity in that inner layer that you could really get into it. I wasn't able to try out the multiplayer, but I'd imagine there's fun to be had there as well. The stylized nature of the game means it's mostly immune from the terrible frame rates and low-resolution textures that the console is known for. A Nintendo 64 game that doesn't look like 50 triangles covered in Vaseline? Sign me up. The music is, of course, a huge part of the appeal. If you think of the gameplay as an interactive music video synced with the soundtrack, it cultivates a real vibe. The way the music and gameplay flow together gives it a distinct immersive feel that's hard to find in puzzle games from the era. Unfortunately, Tetrisphere is pretty hard to come by since, as far as I know, it was never re-released on any virtual console. That said, the cartridges aren't too expensive on the resale market, so if you still got the original hardware, you should be able to find one without too much trouble. Of course, there are other ways to play it as well, but it's known to be a finicky ROM, so you might need to test it and tweak things a bit to get it working smoothly. It's totally worth it though. Even if you're not a big fan of puzzle games, the elegant design and charming era-specific aesthetics make it worth tracking down. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll check back for the next one.